Hey, welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about the art of bug fixing. My name is Bouke Nijhuis and I work for a company called TEQnation. First, I would like to talk about the why. Why am I here on stage talking about solving bugs? First of all, it is an important skill for every developer out there. Sooner or later, you will have to fix bugs. Secondly, I like to fix bugs. For me, bugs are like puzzles and I like solving puzzles, but also for me, they are great learning opportunities. So when everything is going smooth, I do learn, but I learn faster when things break down. So when I have to dive into a bug, I really have to understand how things are working. And so I learn a lot faster. Finally, the information about bug fixing is sparse. I couldn't find a lot of resources out there on the internet. So therefore, I decided to fill this void by creating this presentation. The goal of this presentation is to make you a better bug fixer. So the remainder of this presentation, I will talk about the journey of bug fixing. This journey consists of several phases, and in every phase, I will give you tips and tricks to make your life easier. Without further ado, let's start with the first phase, the detection phase. This phase mostly begins when there is an incident report that you're reading. So there is a user out there with an unexpected experience. And the first thing we're going to check, is it a bug or a feature? Because not everybody knows the system as well as you do. There could be people out there that are using your application or system that made assumptions about your system or do not exactly know what it's supposed to do. So therefore, the first thing you do, you check if it's a bug. Because sometimes you just don't understand and you have to explain to them, this is how the system is designed. This is how it should work. The second thing I would check for is the bug in your application, or is it the one in one of the other applications? Because probably other applications are talking to your application and your application is probably talking to even other applications. So the bug could also be in one of those applications next to your application. So that's the second thing I would check in this phase. The last thing I need in this phase is a list of steps to reproduce the problem. If you don't have a list of steps to reproduce, it gets really hard to solve it. So please try to get these steps so we can continue to the next phase. And the next phase is the reproduction phase. The goal of this phase is to reproduce the problem as fast as possible. And I think this is really important because in this journey, you will have to reproduce this problem many, many times. So the faster you can reproduce the problem, the more time you will save at the end of the journey. So how do you do that? Reproducing as fast as possible. Now, the first thing you should try to do is to try to reproduce locally. Everything you can do on your local machine will always be faster than on a different environment. And also once you can reproduce locally, you will also get a big boost while fixing the problem in one of the later phases, because then you can just create a fix, see if it works. Create a fix, see if it works. So you can work highly iterative. The best outcome of this phase would be a test that reproduces the problem. So I think we're too early in the journey to write a unit test. We just don't know enough about the problem, but you should be able to write an integration test or an end-to-end test. And that would be awesome because then we can, with just one click on a button, we can reproduce a problem. So that's the best outcome that we can hope for in this phase. Lastly, I would argue this is the most important phase. If you have time to invest it in this phase. It will pay back in the end. So then we continue with the research phase, also known as the hunting phase, and this is my favorite phase. This is where we're going to find the reason or the cause of the bug. And we do this in two parts. The first part, we're going to find the location of the problem, and in the second part, we're going to find the reason why there is a problem. So how do we find the location? The first thing we do, we're going to check the log files. If you're really lucky, there's a stack trace in there and it points exactly to the line of code where the problem is occurring. In that case, the first part is done because we already know where the bug is. But in most cases, we have to investigate more. So maybe there is no log line. Maybe there is no stack trace, but there is information. But there is not enough information to exactly pinpoint the problem. First thing we do, we're going to increase the log level. So we move it from info to debug or trace, and hopefully this will give us enough information to pinpoint a problem. If you still do not have enough information, then we have to add more log lines, and you keep adding log lines till you exactly know where the problem is occurring. So the second part, like I said before, is finding the reason. Why is there something going wrong in your application? So the first thing you do, which sounds too easy to be true, is reading the error. And I mean, not just read the error, you have to read it properly. You do not scan it, you read it properly. You do not make assumptions. It happened to me several times in the past that I didn't read the error correctly. And after hours of searching in that area, I couldn't find the problem. I had to start over. So I started over reading the error, and then I noticed I didn't read it properly. I made assumptions about the error, and therefore I lost a lot of time. So please take time to read the error. Read it several times. Then the next thing I do, I Google the error. So in the very, very best case, you go to a website called Stack Overflow, you scroll down till the green check mark, and there's a solution. That does happen sometimes. Not a lot of times, but it does happen. So in all the other cases that it doesn't give you the solution, it at least gives you some new information, or it gives you a new direction to look into. So always Google the error to get some more information, or maybe even the solution. Then I would fire up the debugger. In the previous part, we exactly pinpointed where the problem is occurring. So we put a breakpoint in that line and we fire up the debugger. And then we see how we flow through the code and exactly come to the point where the problem occurs. And we can see the values of all the variables. So this should give us a really deeper understanding of the problem. And in most cases, you will have enough information to see why there is a bug. If you still do not have enough information, I apply the following technique. I apply the rubber ducky technique. So you grab your rubber ducky, you put it on your desk, and you're going to talk to the rubber ducky. You're going to explain the rubber ducky what you've done and what the problem is, or at least you tell them what you know. And talking about a problem uses your brain in a different way than only thinking about a problem. So this is beneficial in trying to find out why there is a problem. I prefer to talk to a real person because this has an extra benefit. After I explain the problem, this person can help me fix the bug. So now you have a team of 2 people fixing the bug. Should be easy. So this should be enough to find the cause of the issue. Let's continue to the next phase. The solution phase. In this phase, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write a unit test. And it's important for 2 reasons. The first reason is, once you have a unit test, you have a really clear indication if you've solved the bug or not. So you can use this as a checkbox. Once the test is green, the bug is fixed. And the second reason is, it will prevent this bug from ever happening again in the future. Because if somebody makes the same mistake, or maybe you make the same mistake, this unit test will find the problem before it goes to production. So that's awesome. So we start with writing a unit test. Then we're going to write a fix. And probably because you spent already so much time investigating the problem, writing a fix should be easy. But sometimes it's still hard. And then you're going to really benefit from running locally, because now you can write a fix, see if it's gone. Write a fix, see if it's gone. You can really be highly iterative, and you can try a lot of fixes in a short amount of time. So the next thing I do after I have a green test, I would like to see if the problem is really gone. So I start up the application locally. I use the list of steps I had from the first phase to see if the problem is still there. And this is important because sometimes you fix a bug, the test is green, but the problem that the user put in the incident report isn't gone. Because sometimes bugs are a string of bugs and you just solved the first one. So now if that's the case, you still have to solve all the other bugs as well before you tell the user the problem is gone. So check locally if the problem is really gone. Once you've checked it locally, you're going to check it on production as well, because your local machine will always be different than the production environment. So maybe you fixed it locally, but you didn't fix it on production. So always check on production if it's gone. So Last phase, the completion phase. First thing you do, you close the incident so the user knows the bug is gone, which is really nice. And then I always do a post-mortem. This is something I don't find a lot of information about, but I like to write an email or create a presentation to explain to my coworkers how I found the problem, how I solved the problem, and how I prevented this problem from ever happening again in the future. So this is a really nice way to share information with your coworkers. And lastly, we're going to celebrate because we solved the bug. Woohoo! Awesome. So actually, this is the end of my presentation. So tomorrow, if you wake up and you only remember one thing from this presentation, let it be this thing. Fast reproduction is key in efficient bug fixing. If you can reproduce a problem really fast, it will save you a lot of time because you have to reproduce many, many times in the bug fixing journey. So remember, fast reproduction. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and now there is some time to ask some questions.